Okay, this is a level check. This is meteorologist Steve Horstmeyer in the streaming center at Fox 19 Now, getting ready to do our live 7:15 weather streaming show. Of course, it's available on Facebook. It's available on YouTube. It's available on Roku. It's available on Fire Stick. It's available on Apple TV. Let's see, where else is it available? Oh, yes, on the Fox 19 News app, on the Fox 19 Now First Alert Weather app, and on the Fox 19 on fox19.com or fox19now.com if you prefer our website. So there are a lot of places you can find the streaming shows that we put on. We have streaming shows at noon Monday through Friday, 7:15 Monday through Friday. We have a streaming show on Saturday and Sunday mornings at 10:15 a.m. and a streaming show on Monday or Saturday and Sundays at 6 p.m. 6 p.m. Saturday and Sundays with Ethan Emery generally. Saturday and Sunday mornings with Ashley Smith. I generally do the 7:15 p.m. and it's either Ashley, Catherine, or Ethan that ends up doing this noon show, the noon Monday through Friday weather streaming show. So let's see. Looks like I've got all the buttons pushed. I don't see any issues going on. We'll be with you in under 2 minutes. And let's see here. Geez, some days iPhones are just a pain in the neck. So much garbage. 1.5 inches of snow as of 7 p.m. at Cincinnati. All right. Okay, and let me see, what was I looking for? Oh, yeah, I was going to Facebook. Under a minute, and I'll be with you live here, everybody. Putting together some trying to find where this thing goes on Facebook is a pain in the neck. There's no doubt about it. Let's see here. Okay, I found it. The First Alert Weather Show. All right. Okay, coming up very shortly, I'll be with you. I've got the lights on. I've got all the... Come on in here, Ethan. I'm giving everybody a mic check because in less than a minute I go live. And I wanted to mention to you... Okay, so we're back. Ethan Emery is back in here. Hi, everybody. This is meteorologist Steve Horstmeyer. Let's talk about going live here. And there you have it, right there. I wanted to show you that the roads are just wet. And to confirm that the roads are wet out there is Ethan Emery. You just came back in from the storm tracker, right?
Yeah, we drove all over Hamilton County, Butler County, and the most I had seen on the roadways was between Eastgate and Anderson Township along I-275, and at most it was just over bridges. Along the edges of the bridges there were some snow accumulating, but it didn't last very long. We kind of went around back that way and everything was melted.
So this just came in as you walked in the door. As of 7 p.m., CVG has received 1.5 inches of snow. 1.4 in Dayton. Now remember, with that, we were not talking about snow that piled up like that. This is actually just estimated amounts based on the water equivalents, and so they converted it over based on the temperature. And everybody knows that dry snow is from cold air, wet sloppy snow is from fairly warm air, and so this is probably a 7-to-1 ratio. But
yeah.
So what else did you see out there?
A lot of wet roads.
Bad drivers?
Yeah. I feel like anymore though that's more common than not.
Yeah, without a doubt. So,
but I was going to say too, with the snow, when we were kind of in the thick of it between like 4 and 5.
Yeah.
That was when it was really coming down, and that was around the time I think it was just after 5 when we saw the snow on the edges of the bridges. But coming back, we were coming back from Lawrenceburg area. All the grass all the snow that's on the grass was all melted.
Yeah, and see and what happened, and I mentioned that on the air, I heard that you reaffirmed that when you were out in the storm tracker, that the precipitation as it falls evaporates a little bit and that cools the air. And then once the precipitation lightens up or stops, the air kind of rebounds to its former temperature.
Latent heat release.
Yes. And what happens there is in the summer when you get a thunderstorm, that doesn't happen as quickly because the rain's much, much heavier. But we were only looking at most, when some of those bands came through, 7/100 of an inch of liquid per hour based on the precipirate from the radar. So that doesn't add up to much. But
yeah.
So did you have fun out there?
It's a blast, sitting in the car for 4 hours.
Do you get bathroom breaks?
Well, yeah, because we eventually did. I got a Slim Jim and a bag of nuts when we left there.
When I was a kid, I used to love Slim Jims.
Oh, Slim Jims are so good.
We used to cut grass in our neighborhood, and we'd cut grass. The guy would pass, and we'd run down to. There was a store called Eats and Treats, you know.
Okay.
And we'd go down there, and we'd get Slim Jims and knee-high root beer.
That's pretty good. But yeah, no, otherwise, I mean, the traffic we ran into was just normal traffic. I really didn't see much in the way of accidents either. I mean, maybe a couple of fender benders. But
well, and I think people are, when it's like this, they're extra cautious. You know,
That's
most
good.
of them are. There's always one or two idiots out there.
Well,
but
we had one. We had somebody cut us off. They didn't use their blinker, and that kind of happens from time to time.
yeah. So, and on days like this, I don't take Columbia Parkway. I try to stay along the river. So
I almost said that we weren't on Columbia Parkway, because that's usually the common place where it's at.
Ah, man, see, what's interesting about that is years ago when they were building Columbia Parkway, my grandfather was an elevator operator in the Carew Tower. That was his full-time job, an elevator operator.
That's pretty cool.
And so my grandmother and my dad, when he was just a little kid, would take a bus down to downtown. They'd meet him when he got off his shift. They would go to a movie or go to lunch or something like that. And then my dad used to have the choice of getting ice cream, or they would have to walk back, or they could ride back on the streetcar. And at that point, they were walking along Columbia Parkway, which wasn't open yet; it was just being built. So,
wow.
Little did they know that what was heralded as one of the greatest transportation miracles in modern urban history would turn out to be such a nightmare. So,
especially when you get a lot of moisture and you get some of the soil coming over top of the
well, I
the
mean,
wall.
and everybody knows this inherently. You've got a hill like this, and if it stays like that, that means it's stable, and gravity and water, and it's all weighed out, and every once in a while, if you get enough, it'll slow. But the minute you take a notch out of it like that, all that's just being held back, tries to come down. And so it didn't work out so well. So anything else weather-wise that you think people need to know?
I was gonna say with how conditions were when we left, or we were coming back, everything was just I will say the snow was coming down at a lot lighter clip, and the snowflakes that were coming down aren't quite as big. I noticed that. I think we saw the beginning and transition to what we're currently seeing. When we left, we were going on 275 in northern Kentucky towards Indiana, and the flakes were small and they were dry. It was really fascinating because they were dry initially, then they got thick and wet, and like they were decent sized flakes, like probably dime size, and then what we're seeing now, they got small again, but they're wet.
Yeah.
So kind of an interesting observation.
Well, one of the things, first of all, when you ended up with small flakes, and then you ended up with just kind of, and the air behind one of these systems isn't all homogeneous. There are little bands, and so you had some. Now you've got the drier stuff beginning to move in, drier and warmer.
Yeah.
Not that much drier, but I mean the real key is that it's a little bit warmer, so the flakes can't form.
Yeah.
And it's just. I tell you what, and then I saw some video. Every once in a while, you saw one of those rural roads that end up snow-coated, but like a few minutes later, it melted off.
Fortunately, all the interstates and major roads we were on, I mean, we took 50 to come back here. That was the fastest way from where we were. Everything's wet. There was no even signs of slush or anything. But when you were talking about the snowflakes and the dry air, I think it's really fascinating, the dynamic processes of how a snowflake can be just based on different pressure and temperature and moisture.
Well, when I got up this morning, my wife gets up a lot earlier than I do. When I got up, the little Chihuahua that we have loves to run down the steps, run through the TV room.
That you adopted.
Yeah.
I was going to say,
and it goes
cute.
flying off the deck and then comes back. But it loves to sprint. And it did the same thing, got to the deck and skidded to a stop because there were these big doily flakes coming down. It was about 8 o'clock, maybe a little bit before 8 o'clock. And it was like, I thought, oh my gosh, look at this big fluffy flakes, and then did the same thing, transitioned for a while, then went to grapple for a while, and then back to snow, and it's just the way it goes.
Yep.
But
fascinating weather around here.
This is the kind of snow we like, though. Now, and if you look at this is our tower cam shot. Half an hour ago, you had no idea that the big buildings in downtown Cincinnati were there. Even with the lights on, you couldn't see them. So the visibility has increased considerably here over the last little while. and the temperatures have begun to recover a little bit. So
Yeah, and another thing I've noticed too is the winds were actually improving. So they were not quite as gusty, because they were gusty for a little bit, but right after sunset, I noticed the winds tapered off significantly.
Yeah, and then that even though we didn't have much in the way of sun, you get enough solar radiation through there to destabilize it a little bit. So, and tomorrow we may have a few spotty, patchy showers around the area, maybe a little mix, but kind of coming to an end. And then I just looked at the new extended ensemble runs, and it's looking like it's going to be probably wet, not icy, but wet on. Maybe I better rethink that here real quick, because I'm kind of thinking about yesterday's forecast. It looks like it's going to be unsettled as we head into Thanksgiving weekend.
Yeah, I noticed that pattern trend a couple weeks ago, even when we were looking at this, because Steve and I both like looking at ensembles and long range forecasts and kind of overall just.
Well, and for somebody your age, it's one thing, but for somebody my age, it's almost a miracle, because literally when I started doing TV weather back at Channel 5 years ago, 1978 was the first time I went on the air. Yeah. We went out 3 days. If it would be Monday morning, I'd give Monday's forecast, Tuesday, and Wednesdays, and very rarely were we accurate for Wednesday. I mean, that's just how it was back then. And now we've been talking about this for like 17 days. Yeah. And hinting a little bit, but building and building and building and building. And I don't think anybody that's watched us can be surprised that this happened.
I remember our conversation. It was right around Halloween. We talked about November 20th to 23rd. At that time, it was kind of a broad range, but I remember this discussion of us getting a lot colder. Sure enough.
And that's when I was working kind of on the winter forecast, and the key to the winter forecast was through the middle of November it would stay warmer than normal, then it would gradually slide off to about normal and then go a little bit below normal, and it's a little bit ahead of schedule. I didn't think it would be as cold as it's going to be until maybe a week later, but by the 5th of December, we've got a string of days that are significantly colder than normal. Not a blast from the Arctic, but definitely just seasonably colder than normal.
Forward to seeing that.
Yeah.
I know yesterday after commenting on here on 15 that you like cold, snowy weather.
Yes, I do. I do, and I don't like to gloat about it that much, because I know that everybody that has to drive 30 or 40 miles to and from work, snow is just no fun at all. I used to before I started in TV, I was teaching school at Dater Junior High on the west side, and I had to go up 74 in Montana, and it's. And every time it snowed, it was just a mess. And back then, the school district didn't call off school until the teachers got there usually. We would be there waiting, and they'd finally say, oh, school's canceled, go home. So then you have to fight it on the way home for no reason at all. But.
Well, I'm sure some people watching, it's been about 10 minutes, they probably aren't happy to see me here instead of the forecast.
No, you've got a lot of experience, and of course you're the pride of Highland County. That's one true. Of the prides of Highland County. So.
I'll say I don't know if I'm the only pride. I mean, there's plenty of good people out of there. But, I got some photos earlier today over towards Lynchburg and even down towards Marshall, where the roads were snow-covered for a little bit.
Yeah, and they did melt off pretty quickly.
Yeah, they
and
did.
I don't think, looking at this, it looks to me like temperatures are going to stay pretty steady overnight. They're not going to go up or down that much. They're just going to kind of stay where they are. And with the subsurface temperatures on all the roads so warm, it takes a lot more than like 29 degrees to get ice forming. Now, if this was after a long cold spell when everything had already cooled off, then we'd be in trouble. But this is, early season snow, a good one.
Yeah, so the lowest surface temperature I had seen, it was from the Ohio Department of Transportation. They have certain weather sensors where their cameras and stuff are. And it was near Elizabethtown on I-275 near US Route 50. And that road temperature, surface temperature, was 38.5 degrees. Okay,
and you know what? That's really interesting, because I went around. Now, I had some trouble with some of them, but I found that same one. But here are the ones. Let me give it full screen. So here, since you were talking about those, in Kentucky, they were 50 to 55. Now, these were at 4 p.m. before the snow got there, okay? So they hadn't begun to cool off much in Kentucky. 38, I just rounded it down to 38. And up to 45. And then Indiana, I only could find one sensor that was at 38, so I just estimated that it would be in between that was a guesstimate. And then subsurface temperatures 55 to 65.
Which isn't all that surprising considering how warm we've been up until this point.
Yeah, exactly. So, so when you have road temperatures at this level, you have subsurface temperatures at that level. It takes it's 28 or 29 is not going to give you ice. So
no, and on top of that too, we had like despite the moderate snow bands we saw, that wasn't nearly enough to overcompensate the warming effect.
Right. And then bridge decks too. I mean, those big concrete bridge decks hold a lot of heat, but your deck surface does not. So 28 degrees, if it drops to that tonight, might be enough for your deck to ice up a little bit. So they're not all the same everywhere. So.
Is that a reminder for yourself when you take the dogs out tonight?
Yeah. Right, because when I get home, I take the dogs out and I have to walk across the deck and down the steps, and more than once I've ended up in my butt. So, okay.
Yeah.
So anything else?
I think that's it.
You've had kind of a long day.
What's that?
You have had kind of a long day.
Yeah, so tomorrow I'm going to be live for Deck the Yalls.
Deck the Yalls down in Florence, huh?
Yep, it's going to be a lot of fun, and going to be there for opening night. So looking.
That'll be a lot of fun. So
let's see all the nice Christmas and holiday lights and get to talk about that.
My wife is a big Christmas person, and so she said, "Oh, there's not much going on in downtown Cincinnati, but there's this one building, and I forget the name of it. So I got to go get a picture of it because she said it's just beautiful."
What part of town?
Right in downtown,
downtown.
on the Main and 7th, I think she said. And I forget what it is. The Richter Phillips building, maybe. That could be it.
It sounds familiar.
But that means nothing to people that have never come downtown. So Trish and I were talking about this yesterday. There are people now. When I grew up, everything was centered on Cincinnati, downtown Cincinnati, northern Kentucky, Indiana, even all the way from to Butler County. Now you've got really Westchester and southern Butler County and western part of Warren County are all kind of a separate, self-contained community, and they didn't used to be.
Yeah.
So there are people. I mean, it was a big thrill for me to go downtown when I was a kid. There are people that haven't been downtown, and so it's different.
So I remember growing up, going to Cincinnati was like the big place. And it was funny because I remember when I got a little bit older, going to the city or going to Cincinnati was Eastgate, Union Township, from Hillsborough.
and when I grew up, we were talking about the 50s, and we moved out into Loveland where there were only 3,000 people there. To go downtown was a long trip because there were all surface roads. You had to go down Loveland, Madeira, down through, and it took a long time to get there, so it felt like a big, long trip. And since my dad traveled to get to the Boone County Airport, as it was called back then, was even longer. Oh my gosh, you had to do Dixie Highway and all that, and Donaldson Road, and so.
So I just thought about this.
Okay.
It was before I leave, a fun fact about a family member of mine. So have you ever heard of Burger Beer?
Okay, before you get to it, whenever I was at a picnic when I was a kid, my uncles, we'd have family picnics with picnic benches, and I was told that all my uncles worked so hard they had to sleep on the benches, but it was because you didn't get it wasn't get me another beer, Steve, it was Steve, get me another burger.
Yep.
So there you go.
Okay, so my great-grandpa, I never got to meet him, he passed away before my dad was born, so it's been a long time. It was Grandpa Farmer.
Grandpa Farmer?
Yeah, no, literally. My grandmother's maiden name is Farmer.
Was he a farmer?
Yeah. Farmer, and he was a beer delivery driver.
So cool.
He would drive to Cincinnati, and he would bring it to Hillsborough, and in Hillsborough, it was on the west side of Hillsborough. I'm trying to think of the name of the street. It's off of 50, but there was this huge garage building, and it was an ice box. They would put the beer in there, and then they would distribute it to all the different little stores.
Yeah. Okay. Now, speaking of ice boxes and that, there's Wasson Way in Hyde Park. Now, if you're not familiar with that, it's a bike trail that used to be a railroad tracks through Hyde Park. And right there at Hyde Park Avenue and Wasson Way, there's a big white house. Not a big white house, but it's now a janitorial supply, I think. That was my mom's house growing up.
Yeah.
Right there along the railroad tracks was a low-slung, about 3/4 of a story building, which was the ice house. And they used to bring ice from downtown Cincinnati on the train. They would unload it, and my grandfather, who I never knew, he died when my mom was 2 years old. He had a horse-drawn wagon, and he delivered ice to the people for the refrigerators, because that's how they used to do refrigerators. So same kind of thing,
That's pretty cool. But yeah, no, I just thought about that connection with
Wow.
Cincinnati and my family.
But that was a long trip for that beer to go. So
yeah, so I can't remember what his route was because my grandma told me this, and she has all crazy stories like that. Because just a real quick backstory, she was raised by her grandmother, and so she says all these old terms. She even calls her refrigerator an icebox today.
Yeah.
And she calls her umbrella a unique name.
A bumbershoot.
Yep, she calls it bumbershoot.
And I know that because that's what my aunts and my grandparents get. And I've tried to find the etymology of that word, and I've never been able to find it. So I have to look it up again, see if I can find it. But a bumbershoot, it's like, where does that come from? But isn't that funny that?
It is.
Now I'm closer to that generation because it was my grandmother and my great grandmother that used to call it that, and my great grandmother's sister and all the aunts and that. So it seemed like it was the women though. It wasn't so much the men that called it, because real men didn't use umbrellas. They just got wet. So.
All they did is put their hat on and just.
You got it.
The rain.
All right.
All right.
What time are you in tomorrow?
I'm going to come in probably around 10:30.
You doing the noon?
Yep, 19 at noon, and then it'll be getting prepped and then heading to Florence.
Okay,
So-
good. Then I'll see you in the morning, and we'll go over that new stuff on the scheduler. So,
All right, that sounds good.
because we just took the weather system to it's now on the cloud.
Ooh, yeah.
It's really appropriate for weather out.
We're
guys.
now in the 21st century.
See you, Ethan. Have a good
All right,
night.
see you, Steve. You
Drive
too.
carefully.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody, let's get back to weather now. We talked a lot about weather, but I'll start back over. And Ethan and I love to chat about old times. Him being from a rural area, there's a lot of tradition there. It gets passed down. And in urban areas, it doesn't seem to be that much, but I'm old enough that my memories of that stuff go way back. Okay, there you see the visibility improving around the tri-state. And 32 degrees, so the temperature at the international airports come up 1 degree since the precipitation's lightened up, and that winter weather alert, the winter weather advisories, continues in effect until 4 a.m. Here are the airport temperatures. Now, Middletown's up to 32. Middletown earlier was at 30. Springboro was at 30, and it's up to 31. Lebanon was at 30. It's up to 32. So that's what Ethan and I were talking about. As the precipitation falls, some of that evaporates, okay? And that evaporation takes some energy, and the energy to do the work of evaporation comes from the air, and that cools it, okay? And then once the precipitation moves on and stops evaporating, the air can recover to not necessarily all the way up to its former temperature, but at least a few degrees, and that is what's happened in this case. CVG did the same thing, up from 31 to 32. And we're expecting it to be about 33 later on. And we just looked at this, and just showing you how warm things are out there, and that's why we're not too worried about any kind of icy driving this evening, or really overnight for that matter. All right, wind chills in the 20s around the area, 19 in Ashland, Kentucky, 30 in Chillicothe, but wind chills are one of those weather variables that vary quite a lot, okay? And so they will vary a little bit. But there you see the back edge of the precipitation now moving about through Indianapolis. Looks like it'll be through the Cincinnati area by 10:22, through Maysville by 11:44, and that means for Kinnickinnick, for Vanceburg and Lewis County, for Blue Creek and Adams County, it'll be done by about midnight. Now here's what we're going to start this at 4 o'clock, and this is what the model showed. It showed that by 7 o'clock there'd be about 3/10 of an inch of snow. That's by 8 o'clock at CVG Owenton, Kentucky. Okay, 8/10 of an inch up near Batesville, 4/10 up in Hamilton, 4/10 in Cincinnati, and 3/10 in Hillsborough. Those are the yellow numbers. And so one of the things I have to say is that when you end up with this kind of wet snow that melts so fast, it's really difficult. You can't measure it. You've got to estimate it, and those estimates are not nearly as accurate as it is when you actually measure it and it doesn't melt away as it falls. And so then by midnight there you see a little bit of rain and snow mixed left off to the southeast of the city, but for the most part the snow comes to an end around midnight. Now visibilities are going to improve dramatically. You can see by the time we get to 2 a.m. no more restricted visibilities around the tri-state, but until then you might end up with some spots where you have to slow down a little bit because the visibility has dropped quite a bit. Future wind chills tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. in the 20s, a few spots in the teens. Get ready if you go out early to bundle up. Okay, now here's what the model is showing. Notice the precipitation by 11 o'clock. This is pretty close to what we just estimated from radar. By 11 o'clock, pretty much gone. By the time we get to 7 a.m., long gone with actually a little bit of clearing. Temperature is 32. That's the CVG, the International Airport Temperature, the official for Cincinnati. So temperatures aren't expected to change much. And then maybe a few showers, maybe mixed in with a little snow pop up tomorrow. But temperatures do make it up into the low 40s. Now this evening, it's 32 right now. We expect it to be about 32 by 9 p.m., maybe up 1 more degree by 11 p.m. as the precipitation lightens up even more. And we'll show you a graph of this, but the 6 to 10 day outlook from the Climate Prediction Center says colder than normal, and then the 8 to 14 day outlook goes through the 5th of December, says colder than normal, and actually it's an increase of cold weather from yesterday's forecast. Now, this will be updated tomorrow. I'm thinking that that's going to change quite a bit because from the 6th through the 19th, it had it warmer than normal, so we're going to have to see. I'll bet we have a slow recovery, but it's not going to get that much warmer than normal soon. Precipitation, a little bit above normal through the 1st, a little bit above normal, a little bit below normal or near normal through the 5th, and then back to a little bit above normal through the 19th. So your 7-day forecast looks like this. We're looking at a low tonight of 31, a high tomorrow of 43. That light mix will continue but begin to taper off and end. Dry weekend with chilly mornings, cool afternoons. We make it back to 53 by Sunday. Monday, some scattered showers and 58. Partly cloudy Tuesday, 44 and 47 for Wednesday and Thursday, and both days mostly cloudy with morning lows in the 30s. Okay, beyond the 7-day forecast looks like this. We're looking at, and again, I forgot to take Thanksgiving off of the Friday bar, so and everybody knows that that's a mistake. We don't have 2 Thanksgivings. So showers on Thanksgiving, shower activity Saturday, dry on Sunday the 1st, and then it looks like we go into a very active, chilly pattern, which could mean a little bit of rain and snow, or maybe snow only. We'll have to see how the individual systems work out. So here's a 14-day temperature forecast for you, the only one here in Cincinnati. We see temperatures drop off on the high side to well below normal. Low temperatures a little bit below normal, but close to normal. And the takeaway on this particular forecast is this, okay? The takeaway is that it's going to be cooler than normal as we head to the 5th of December. We're going to get some much needed moisture as we head to the 5th of December, and we do not have an Arctic blast beginning to come our way. Now, when we look at the precipitation pattern, I just showed you, we got some new stuff in since I did that. I had quite a bit of precipitation in here. We might have to back off a little bit on that based on what I've seen from the latest models. So that's that part of it. Okay, let me see if we've got any comments. With Ethan and I getting carried away with talking, we kind of went overboard here. So let me see. Molly Purcell says, hello, Steve. Happy retirement early. Wow, we got about 2 inches of snow around Pleasant Plain by Stone Lick, and that's pretty common. It's 1.5 in Cincinnati, about 2. And that's that wet, sloppy stuff that doesn't cause a lot of problems. And that's good news because as that snow slowly melts, it'll soak into the soil and help recharge that soil. Stacy Michelle Erdl says, hey, I used to watch you before school every morning. Well, that takes you back a long way because I've been here since 2008 and I've done the evenings, and that's when I was at Channel 12. So hi, Stacy. Hope everything is well for you. Let's see here, and let me put me back on screen so it doesn't sound like you're listening to a voice from nowhere. All right, so let's go. So up in Pleasant Plain, about 2 inches. And then Stacy said, then her continuation says, I was a kid and now getting updates from you, see what you expect from Mike. So she watched me as a kid looking for morning reports for going to school in the winter, and her kids are now doing the same thing. So, well, Stacy, thank you very much. Oh, and Molly Purcell said hello to Ethan. Ethan's on his way out. He's worked a long day today. She's going to get some sleep. Oh, Stacy Michelle Erdl said her kids went sledding for 15 minutes before they got too cold. But you know what? It only takes 15 minutes to have a great time sledding if you're out there in that cold weather, cold and wet. Okay, so Steve is retiring. When was that broadcast? He's been on for ages. I've been on since 1978. I am retiring in the spring. Originally, we were thinking around the middle of March, but it probably is going to be like the end of May at this point. And part of that is helping the station, where if I left at a certain time, that would make the station, put the station in kind of difficulties, because it takes a while to get new people up and running. And so I have announced my retirement, and it looks like it'll probably be the end of May. That's still to be decided, but that's what it looks like now. So it's kind of early. It's still 6 months. It's half a year. A lot can change by then, but that's what it looks like now. All right. Susan Wally says, hello, beautiful day. I agree, Susan. I love the snow. And then David Steinmetz says, hey, he's a Cincinnati native and he's enjoying his golden retirement here in Tampa Bay. And I tell you what, I'm sure you don't have any snow down there, David, and hope you enjoy at least knowing what's going on back at home. And I hope you enjoy your retirement down there. Do I have big plans for retirement? I've got a big honey-do list. I really don't. I just say that because my wife looks at me when she hears somebody say, hey, I heard I've got a big honey-do list for you. So, no, I think my wife and I have 8 dogs, and I like to walk them every day, so it's fun to walk the dogs. I'm planning on riding my bicycle a lot, doing some kayaking in the Little Miami River. I've got a lot of photography equipment that I use. I collect old lenses. I'm going to do a lot of that. And then we will do a little bit of traveling. But I just kind of want to settle down, stay at home, enjoy the dogs. And it's really interesting because I was talking to the retired Enquirer critic, John Kieswetter, yesterday. And he asked me about that. And I said, well, you know, the thing that hits me the most is that my wife and I have been together since 1989. And then I worked early mornings. Then I had 4 months off between going from Channel 12 to Fox 19. That was what they call the non-compete. And then I was working evenings. And my wife and I, since we've been together, we've only had 4 months in that entire time when I have a normal schedule and we can, like, when she comes home from work or I come home, do some grilling or anything like that, it's always like I have to get up early to see her and she has to stay up late to see me nowadays. So that's another thing, touch a little bit, get a little bit more, more conversation going with my wife, because most of the time when we're both at home, it's nighttime and we're asleep and we don't, I have to get up early to talk to her, and she gets up early and can't stay up until midnight when I get home. So that is it. I hope everybody has a good evening. And again, the roads should stay just wet. And one more time, it was through 7 p.m., 1.5 inches at CVG for the Cincinnati official up in Pleasant Plain. Molly reported 2 inches. And similar amounts around there. It was enough. Every once in a while, if it fell heavily or quickly enough, you get a little bit on the road, but it quickly turned to slush and then melted off. And that's kind of what we expect, because we don't expect any big temperature change overnight. It's going to stay about where it is. So that's it. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for all the comments and the good wishes. And I will see you tomorrow, and we will update that 3 to 4 week outlook. Remember, it was done last Friday. It's only done every week, so it'll be nice to see what's going to happen there. And that is it. Thanks for joining me.